This conversation now, 28 years into democracy, some leaders believe that South Africa is beginning to show signs of a failed state. Some of the reasons stated include the wide inequality gap, rising poverty levels, lawlessness, corruption, relentless looting and load shedding. Political analyst Professor Tinyiko Maluleke says in order to avoid a failed state, citizens must reclaim their humanity. He joins me now for some analysis post the National Freedom Day celebrations, Professor. Some people holding the strong view that there isn't much to celebrate. I want to ask of you one question. What has become of the new dawn?
Well, I wouldn't be the best positioned to answer regarding the new dawn, given that it comes from a particular echelon in our system of governance in the country. So I wouldn't want to pretend to speak for them. But if you mean by new dawn, the dawn that occurred on the 27th of April, 1994, then we can talk, because indeed the 27th of April 1994 ushered in a new situation, a new dispensation in our country. You and I and those before us who had not been able to vote before, who were pariahs in this country and were not regarded as an essential element of the citizenry, were able to begin to participate in shaping the future of the country. So that is a significant milestone. We cannot scoff at it. It would be wrong to do so. It would also be ahistorical to do so.
Prof, I want to pick on two issues that have sort of come onto the news agenda post these Freedom Day celebrations. The one in your province of birth, or your home province, I should say, in Limpopo, a farmer there, and the Sowetan is quite specific, a 77-year-old white farmer shot at a group of black people, and the understanding, or at least the allegation for now, up until we hear from the police, is that he allegedly mistook them for hippos. So that talks to social cohesion element of South Africa. Then you have the secretary of the ANC in Gauteng, Jacob Kawe. Today, he sits on special leave because the allegation against him is that he has been physically abusing his wife. The president referred to GBV as the second pandemic in the country. Again, I ask you of the goals of this current administration, or should we actually extend it and say, what has the ANC government achieved, at least in these past 2 decades, if you are able to summarize that in a minute?
Yeah, again, I think I listened carefully to the president yesterday. He did highlight what, in his opinion, were the achievements over the past 2 decades. He highlighted a few things. I don't want to repeat what he said. I am not his spokesperson. But I want to assume that he is the most well-informed person in this country to speak authoritatively about what we have achieved. What I can tell you, though, is that there is indeed a huge discrepancy between the goals that we have set for ourselves as a country, as reflected in the National Development Plan and other plans that the country has, the ambition that the country has set for itself as implied in our constitution, and where we are. So there is a yawning gap. There are problems around employment, there are problems around infrastructure, there are problems around social cohesion, which you rightly have pointed out. I mean, idea that black people look like animals, whatever animals, is not original to this particular shooter of black people. It has surfaced before, and it's a pathetic excuse. It speaks to how far we are from the ambitions that we have set for ourselves in terms of coherence. So, I think there is a lot of work that remains to be done in all those categories that you have hinted at in your question. And, as I reflected in my article that came out yesterday, I have a sense that South African citizens will have to take more and more responsibility for their agency in making South Africa the country that we want it to become.
Professor, you're referring to South Africans becoming more activist in nature when it comes to the issues that plague this country. And one of those big issues, Professor, is what the President spoke about before. It was just the day before the Freedom Day celebrations when he was addressing a joint sitting of Parliament and indeed the National Council of Provinces, where he stressed the issue of monies that are going to be extended to the people of KwaZulu-Natal who have suffered recently as a result of the floods, that those monies have to be safeguarded so that they are used for their intended purpose. Again, yesterday, he repeated himself. That is one of South Africa's biggest challenges, corruption. What kind of role should South Africans start taking when it comes to corruption? What kind of activist society do we need to be?
It starts at the individual level. South African citizens as individuals have got to take a stance against corruption ethically. And that means that as citizens, we cannot participate in any arrangement or deal that is corrupt in its intention or nature. And that starts from when we are being stopped by a cop who asks for cold drink in the streets. We have to ask what it means, and we have to explain that we are not participating in it at an individual level. When we are being requested to make a payment for an RDP house in order to jump the queue, or for an ID when you are applying for an ID at Home Affairs. In all those instances and more complicated ones, we have to say no as citizens. It starts there. It will not start at the level of the local stokvel or the local branch of a political party or the local NGO if it doesn't exist at the individual level. And so I'm appealing in that article to the individual consciences of South Africans. And when we do get the RDP house or the grant from government, they are not doing us a favor. This is our money. So we ought not to thank the political party for doing it as if they were expected to do anything else. We ought to recognize this as the correct usage of the state coffers, which is our tax money. So that's the other thing, that sometimes we become so thankful for what we see as charity from government, when in fact it ought not to be charity.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that active citizens and ethical citizens should begin to do in order to direct things in this country and not merely wait for the state to do them for us or for things to happen on us, as it were.
Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, let's end the conversation there. You and I can go on for days. I really wanted to touch on the ANC being accused number one when it comes to corruption. I wanted to conclude it there, but time against us. Thank you, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke.